All right, welcome back. Roy from eBikes Hawaii. Once again, taking a look at a fresh new e-mountain bike that just arrived. This is the Rocky Mountain Instinct Powerplay Alloy 70 BC Edition. This bike is from Canada, came all the way, and we're really stoked on the Rocky brand. They have beautiful bikes, not only electric, but acoustic as well. They're really top notch, and they've been around, they've been in the game for as long as I can remember as one of the top brands out there. The Powerplay lineup is relatively new for Rocky. I believe around 2018 is when they first started to hit the mountains. And this is a really awesome platform. It's 29er, what's considered longer travel. I believe it's 150 front and rear. Definitely has quality suspension, all good components. This is an XT-centric driveline, and also the brakes are Shimano XT as well. It has a race face, internally cable routed dropper post. It's got the flip chip system, which in short allows you to change the dynamics of the suspension by adjusting one little chip here in the rear linkage. So that's really cool. And the overall characteristic is just, on the trail, it feels awesome. It feels very much like a regular mountain bike. It doesn't feel like a electric bike with compromises, to be honest. I believe actually the drive system, the Dyname system, which we're gonna actually do a bit of a deeper dive into in a minute here, was designed to preserve the characteristic, and the geo and the chainstays is identical to that of the Instinct non-electric counterpart. So they really basically developed this bike from the ground up to work around the core essence of what the Instinct is. So Rocky Mountain uses a really nicely integrated down to battery system. It's 600, about 75 watt hours, I believe, total capacity. And it's super sleek, it's not chunky at all. And there's also a piggyback expansion here where you can hook up a secondary battery for range extender as well, which is really cool. On the small size frame, there is a label here that states that you may need to make some adjustments on the rear shock to fit that piggyback battery, but for all of the other sizes, I do not believe it's an issue. So that's really cool. It's really all day capable of riding, especially with the range extender. And moving down to the drive unit, so this is kind of special. It's not any of the mainstream drive systems. This is Rocky's, they claim, developed in-house their own system called the Dyname. And it's very interesting. The look of it is very cleanly integrated. There's no branding, there's no labeling like you would see on like a Bosch or a Yamaha drive. And it's completely enclosed. It's got kind of like a shield here on this side, and on the back side as well, there's another shield. And it's interesting for a few reasons. Number one, they were able to maintain the exact same chainstays length on this particular drive unit as a normal bicycle. So the distance basically from the cranks, the front chainring, to the rear part of the swing arm remains identical. That has not been extended like some other e-bikes you'll see out there with off-the-shelf drive systems from Shimano, Bosch, Yamaha, things like that. This preserves that feeling of, and that snappiness of riding a regular bicycle. There is actually another sprocket that's tucked underneath this shield up here. That's actually where the power is being delivered. And so the chain runs from the rear directly to that top kind of northern sprocket location. And then the chain wraps underneath the pedaling sprocket with a tensioner that gives you about 50% wrap on that chainring. And so you actually have the motor system and the drive sprocket basically tucked further forward, which is very different than any other manufacturer in the way they've integrated the drive systems. So what does this equate to as far as the actual riding experience? Number one, what really kind of piqued our interest about this whole drive system is This is the only 48 volt system that we're aware of, other than maybe like the Fly On and some other, I think the Spitzing as well, that runs off of a 48 volt system, but those are kind of a different type of product. They're extremely heavy, and I don't think either is really available in the US, to be honest. So as far as this weight and this type of e-mountain bike category, I have never seen another 48 volt system. So like the Bosch, the Yamaha, Shimano, the Bros, those all run off of 36 volt. With the voltage being higher, it can potentially equate to more power. I've actually put a decent amount of miles on here to really get the full experience, and I have had clocked a lot of hours on the other drives as well, the Bosch and the Yamaha. It's quite different. I would say for around town use, for just putting around, mostly flat, and maybe like up to kind of medium level inclines, I would say that this system requires a little bit more input. It heavily favors the torque sensing compared to the other drive units, where something like the Bosch drive, once you start spinning up, the motor basically kicks in. If you're on turbo, it gets to a point where the motor's basically going on its own, because the Bosch factors in torque, cadence, and speed, and it uses an algorithm to figure out how much power it wants to give you. So in a way, the pedaling experience, in my mind, can feel a little bit disconnected when you're on those higher power modes, because once you start pedaling, the motor basically takes over and you're really just spinning the cranks to activate the system. And those systems are powerful as well, and they're great drive systems, but this, in a way, preserves more the feeling of pedaling a bicycle, because the motor only responds really acutely to your input. So even on the higher power modes, if there's not torque being put down by your legs, the motor, it's not gonna kick up all the way. Where it really shines is when you're in the high power mode and you're going up a steep hill. We rode St. Louis Heights on this bike a few times, and side by side, Bosch versus Rocky Mountain. On the steepest inclines, this thing just chugs up like I have not experienced before. You can basically, because when you're on such a steep incline, the motor is going to be fully activated by that amount of torque that you're putting in. It senses that, oh, you're needing the help. There's a lot of input going in by the rider to get up something steep. And then when that 48 volt motor kicks in, I haven't had a climbing experience like this bike on any other drive system. You can basically go up vertical hills so long as you're not tipping over, and there was a significant difference in that compared to the other drive systems. So it's kind of apples and oranges. Is one better than the other? What's best for me? That's a question that is going to be up to the rider in their preference of how they want the power to come on, how much power they want, and the feel of the system. You do feel a little bit, I guess, a little bit of drag. It's not really a whole lot, but because of the tensioner system, you do feel a little bit of input there while you're pedaling. But again, when you're going up something steep, the motor it kicks ass basically. So I would say for someone that really values the feeling of riding a regular bicycle and having the motor be hyper responsive to the input of the rider, the Rocky is an excellent option. There are situations with the Bosch and the Yamaha drive that I've encountered in the past where, let's say you're on turbo, you're sitting on the bike, you're resting, and then you accidentally, put some pressure on the pedals, the motor kicks in, the bike gets going, and it just kind of keeps going on its own a little bit longer than you'd want it to. And so it almost has kind of like a ghosting effect of the power. Whereas because the Rocky Mountain is so hypersensitive with the torque sensing, as soon as you let your feet off the pedals and the pressure is off, the power instantaneously cuts out. So in a sense, it's a little bit more accurate, I guess, as far as the pedaling and the way the power engages goes. If you're in really technical situations too, at slower speeds, navigating, I think this can be an advantage. And yeah, that's about it on the Instinct Powerplay. Thanks for watching. Check back for more content. We've got more videos on the way. A lot of bikes coming in, so stay tuned and we'll see you in the next video.